Good evening. What unfolded on the Eastern Front over the past 2 days caught the Kremlin completely off guard, shocked Russian commanders unprepared for it, and is quietly being hailed by the United States and Europe as one of the most significant battlefield surprises of the entire conflict. Ukraine launched a swift, coordinated, and precise strike that dealt severe blows to Russian forces, damages so substantial that the impact rippled rapidly from the front lines all the way to Moscow's political elite. For the first time in months, Russia's leadership appeared rattled, bewildered, and publicly contradicted by its own regional commanders. This was no ordinary skirmish. It laid bare glaring flaws in Russia's strategic planning, supply chain, and operational discipline. In the harsh calculus of great power conflict, when a nation with internal fractures suffers a sudden defeat, its leadership enters a precarious state prone to risky and unpredictable choices. The attack hit from an unexpected direction. For weeks, Russian intelligence underestimated Ukraine's capacity, believing Kyiv lacked the troops, drones, ammo, and surveillance needed for a bold counteroffensive. Moscow's analysts assumed Ukraine had shifted to defense mode. They believed Ukrainian units were too depleted to maneuver, and they figured delays in American aid meant Ukraine's ability to execute large-scale operations had deteriorated. These assumptions couldn't have been more wrong, catastrophically so, because Ukraine quietly, methodically, and with coordination surpassing expectations, prepared a strike targeting Russia's most vulnerable nerve center, a command and logistics hub Moscow had grown complacent about. Defending. The assault began with extensive reconnaissance flights using Western-supplied drones and locally adapted models, which slipped past Russian air defenses by flying low, slow, and erratically. These drones weren't designed to attack, but to observe, map territories, collect electronic signatures, track vehicle movements, rotation patterns, and even the scheduling of officer briefings. By the time Ukraine locked in its attack plan, it precisely knew when Russian units were most exposed, when commanders were on site, and when air defenses were weakest. The strike came at dawn, chosen not for dramatic effect, but because Russian troops are statistically least alert in the shift from night to day. Ukraine's initial wave targeted communication hubs, blinding the Russian brigade overseeing 3 neighboring sectors. Within moments, radio silence and conflicting signals forced Russian units to fall back on outdated, slow, vulnerable backup channels frequently jammed by Ukrainian electronic warfare squads. This was just the opening salvo of chaos. The second wave delivered the real punch. Precision drone strikes, armed with warheads designed not to blow up entire buildings, but to collapse the exact rooms housing commanders. This surgical tactic meant Ukraine didn't just neutralize officers, it wiped out entire decision-making hierarchies. Russian troops suddenly found themselves leaderless, fractured, and without the core, coordinated efforts were critical to fend off an assault that hit faster than their defense lines could respond. Then came the ground offensive. Ukrainian troops didn't push forward in one massive surge. Instead, they moved in multiple small teams through forest corridors, ravines, and abandoned trench systems Russia believed were off limits. These Ukrainian units didn't charge wildly ahead. They stealthily infiltrated, and within the hour, had breached the first Russian defensive line, causing Moscow's forces to fall back in scattered disarray. The limited footage reveals evident chaos, soldiers leaving armored vehicles behind, artillery crews abandoning ammunition stores, and officers struggling to rally troops who'd lost a clear front line to defend. Russia's losses weren't just in manpower, they lost vital equipment and command infrastructure. Ukraine struck fuel depots, mobile command centers, drone control hubs, and several major artillery units relentlessly pounding Ukrainian towns for weeks. Internal estimates in Moscow paint a far grimmer picture than anything Russian state media dares acknowledge. But the real damage isn't just the casualty count, it's the strategic confusion now rippling through the Kremlin. Moscow's entire war strategy depends on showing power, control, and an air of inevitability. Every official speech spins the war as a slow but sure victory. Every statement insists Ukraine is running out of steam. Every message claims Western backing is waning. This sudden Ukrainian offensive straight up shatters that carefully crafted story, and when propaganda cracks, political stability shudders alongside. Inside Moscow, according to multiple Western intelligence sources, initial reactions were sheer confusion. Regional commanders reported conflicting information. The Defense Ministry downplayed the situation. Units argued on whether the setback was due to Ukrainian skill, Russian incompetence, or even sabotage. None of this chaos stayed under wraps. Word leaked upward, and within hours, senior Kremlin advisors demanded briefings frontline commanders couldn't deliver. This pattern is typical when a government gets caught flat-footed. From a pragmatic viewpoint, this Ukrainian strike matters not only because of the heavy losses inflicted, but because it exposes a weakness in Russia's military that the Kremlin desperately hides. The Russian military system is fragile. It fractures under pressure. It struggles to absorb shocks. It can't quickly adjust to rapid, decentralized attacks. And that's precisely the kind of warfare Ukraine has mastered. This fragility isn't just a battlefield problem. It seeps into Russian politics. When a great power's military suffers an unexpected blow, blame starts flying. Generals point fingers. Advisors demand answers. Intelligence agencies claim they warned about this vulnerability. Putin's inner circle feels the crunch. No major power, even an authoritarian regime, is safe from internal turmoil when the narrative of inevitable victory falls apart. Now, think about how this shifts the war's bigger picture. Russia depends heavily on artillery dominance, tightly coordinated logistics, and predictable troop rotations. This Ukrainian strike threw all three into disarray. When intelligence services first caught wind of the incident, confusion reigned. Regional commanders were sending mixed reports. The Ministry of Defense tried to downplay what was happening. Inside the ranks, debates raged over whether the setback was due to Ukrainian skill, Russian mismanagement, or even sabotage. None of this stayed quiet. It leaked upward, and within hours, top Kremlin advisors were demanding updates that frontline commanders simply couldn't provide. This scenario only happens when a government is truly caught off guard. From a realist perspective, this Ukrainian strike matters not just because of the heavy damage it caused, but because it exposes a critical truth about Russia's military that the Kremlin desperately wants hidden. The Russian system is fragile. It cracks under pressure. It struggles to handle surprises. It can't quickly adapt to fast, decentralized attacks, the exact kind of warfare Ukraine has mastered. This vulnerability stretches beyond the battlefield and seeps into Russian politics. When a major power's military faces an unexpected blow, its leaders start pointing fingers internally. Generals shift the blame. Advisors demand answers. Intelligence agencies claim they flagged weak spots, and Putin's inner circle begins to feel the heat. No major power, not even an authoritarian regime, is immune to internal turmoil when the storyline of certain victory falls apart. Think about how this shakes the broader war effort. Russia depends heavily on artillery dominance, tight logistical coordination, and predictable unit rotations. This Ukrainian strike threw a wrench into all three. The strike didn't just wreck equipment. It forced Russia to pull troops from quieter fronts. It made Russia burn through ammo it had been saving for future attacks and forced a reshuffle in brigade command amid battle. In a war that grinds on, moments like these matter not because they end the fight, but because they speed up exhaustion. Meanwhile, Ukraine has learned to fight smart, not big. It uses limited resources to strike where Russia is weakest, not where it's strongest. This method, though slow, piles on the pressure. Russia can hide casualty numbers from its people, but it can't hide the drain on its manpower. It can't hide the rapid turnover of commanders. And it can't hide that its top units are wearing down faster than they can be rebuilt. There's another layer to this, well understood by Western analysts but rarely admitted by politicians. Russia can't sustain those severe losses forever. Sure, it has manpower and can call up more soldiers, but skilled officers aren't replaced as fast as raw recruits. Experienced artillery crews don't come overnight. Drone pilots, recon teams, signal experts, these aren't roles you fill by throwing untrained conscripts into the line. When Ukraine targets these critical spots, it breaks Russia's war machine on a fundamental level. That recent Ukrainian strike did just that. It didn't just hit tanks or trucks, it hit command systems, comms, and coordination networks. The Kremlin knows it now. That's why we're witnessing signs of chaos inside Russia. Fractures between military groups, tension between the defense ministry and field commanders, frantic troop redeployments, and rushed reinforcements scrambling to fill gaps. This isn't the behavior of a confident power. It's the behavior of a state suddenly aware it's far more vulnerable than it ever admitted. This puts the United States in a tricky spot. Washington didn't expect Ukraine to pull off an attack of this magnitude right now. American intel thought Ukraine was conserving strength, gearing up for a long defensive stretch. But the success of this strike forces the US to face a harsh reality. Russia isn't as stable as it seems. And when a nuclear-armed power becomes strategically shaky, the risk of escalation rises not because it wants more war, but because it's terrified of losing. The Kremlin fears losing control above all else. This sudden strike has planted exactly that fear, not overtly, not publicly, but deep inside where it really counts. Russia is staring down a moment of serious strategic embarrassment. Ukraine is showing it can adapt under pressure, and the US is watching the shockwaves hit Moscow's political core. This conflict is moving into a dangerous new phase, one marked not by stable fronts, but by surprise, disruption, and internal turmoil. Russia took heavy hits. The Kremlin is thrown into chaos, and the fallout from this moment is going to shape every decision from here on out.